Why do we look at calendar events? We use them to find high probability trading opportunities. And we did have one this week that we traded live as a risk event on Wednesday, the 16th of October. Now, what we saw was inflation data coming in weaker. Now, with the actual cheat sheet that we had up for Wednesday, we were actually looking for a more significant miss in order to give us a trading opportunity. So we wanted to see this coming in below market's minimum expectations across the board, and that would have given us a very clear euro pound buy bias at market. However, trading the situation live, we recognize that look, the month on month is in line with the low, core year on year in line with the low, month on month headline in line with the low minimum expectations. Same with the headline. So very weak across the board. And then crucially, the services sector, which the Bank of England projected to be 5.5%, and the minimum that was expected by all the analysts surveyed was 5.1%. Look, coming in at 4.9. Shock, surprise. And that is a key metric the Bank of England are looking at. So we knew out of that, that would give us a very clear pound sell bias. And so we're looking for euro pound buying out of the event. And we looked at a very simple move up from this sort of around this A350 region. And we're looking at taking profit up at that 8375, which we made very clear during the actual event. And, we traded it very clearly. You can see, hit target was around a key pivot point. You can see on the daily chart, just a kind of obvious technical area we'd expect to find targets. And that's why we look at these high probability trading events, to find these little cherry picked examples. People have been looking to sell the pound for some time now, and that was the first kind of little excuse that we could see, yeah, traders will jump on that. It does remain to be seen how this develops. And of course, in the coming week after this, we've got Bank of England's Bailey speaking, and it's all change again. But for now, that was a short-term opportunity. That's why I look at these calendar events, just to find these short-term opportunities where it's highly likely that an instrument, in this case the euro pound, is going to move in one direction, and it does provide a decent opportunity, which is why we look at them. So as we approach this week, it is quieter as we look at the week beginning October the 21st. But there are a few things that do stand out and that's worth looking at, could provide opportunities. The first one's a little bit harder to quantify, but we've got a number of Bank of England speakers coming up this week. At 2:25 and at 9:30, we've got Bank of England's Bailey speech. Now, Bank of England Bailey, he gave the pound a real sharp shove lower just a couple of weeks ago when he mentioned that the Bank of England could be more aggressive on interest rate cuts if the inflation outlook allowed it. Well, sure enough, the latest CPI data was showing a sharp drop lower. The headline came in at 1.7% in the Bank of England's target. Core came in below consensus. We also had the services inflation print coming in at 4.9%, below the minimum expected and below the Bank of England's forecast of 5.5%. So we know that the Bank of England are carefully looking at that metric. So the point of it all is that that does give a potential green light for Bank of England's Bailey's so-called aggressive rate cuts. Will he echo that sentiment? If he does, we could easily see the pound fall further out of Bailey's speeches, particularly look for any hints that the Bank of England will start to be cutting meeting by meeting now. That would send the pound sharply lower. It's one to watch. Also, not on this presentation, but worth bearing in mind, Catherine Mann is also speaking on Thursday at 2 p.m. Now, Catherine Mann is interesting. If you look at her voting history, you can see that she tends to be a more hawkish voter. And there's been times when the Bank of England have kept rates at 5.25%, but look here, all the way back August last year, look, Mann wanted a 5.5, Bank of England went for 5.25, Mann wanted 5.5, 5.25, 5.5. She is really an inflation fighter. Hates it, wants to have interest rates high, wants to really squeeze the economy and get all that inflation out. So she is a more hawkish member. So what people will be looking for is if Catherine Mann says something dovish, if she starts looking about, sequential rate cuts. Now's the time to start cutting rates. We need to step up our speed in cutting interest rates. Then she also could send the pound sharply lower. And as one of the most hawkish members of the Bank of England, if she says anything dovish, that's a big tick for pound bears. So big one to be looking at. A little bit difficult to look at. So you need a squawk for these, but just be aware that these events are happening and certainly could produce some volatility in the pound. Next event is the European PMIs. Now, ECB met in the last week and they cut rates by 25 basis points expected. They didn't promise another rate cut as expected. Christine Lagarde said, I'm not opening the door to a December rate cut. We're going to be data dependent. And she did say that they are concerned about growth. So we did see some euro dollar downside on ECB's Lagarde's press conference. Makes sense. Also dollar strength with Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. Donald Trump's edging closer in the polls. It looks like a real tight run thing. And investors are looking at that and thinking, oh no, there's going to be tariffs in the US against China. There's going to be more trade wars. More stress, more dollar strength. So dollar strength, euro weakness makes sense. So what we want to see here on October 24th is if we get some respite, if the European PMIs suddenly lift, if there's a sudden sense of, yes, the worst is behind us, the Eurozone is in a turning point. Now, also, there was a bit of disappointment about the fiscal stimulus measures from China. That would be an obvious trade partner for Eurozone. There hasn't been obvious signalling from the Chinese government about how they're going to sort of boost the economy in a way that markets like. So as a result, there has been that negativity around Eurozone growth, which Lagarde mentioned in the press conference. That's something she's concerned about as well. So what we want to see here, strong PMI prints. If that surprises to the upside, look for euro strength. So you could see a nice euro pound buy bias on a hot European PMI print. That would be definitely one to look for on Thursday. Then we've got UK PMIs. Now, I want to see the opposite here for a pound sell. We're not interested in buying the pound at the moment. There is also a budget coming up very, very close in the UK, coming up towards the end of October. But if we see a big, big miss in these UK PMIs, then that could be the catalyst for pound selling, because investors might think, oh, look, the UK economy is starting to show signs of stress and struggle. The Bank of England will have to cut interest rates now. We don't care, what they're going to do. They're going to have to do it, so we'll start selling the pound. So UK PMIs, definitely worth looking at on Thursday, October the 24th. So that's what to look ahead. Don't forget, we'll have the cheat sheet up in advance, so you know exactly what to look for, particularly for the European and the UK PMIs. The Bailey's speeches is a lot harder to put on the cheat sheet, but basically we're looking for him to signal sequential interest rate cuts for the Bank of England. That should likely result in pound selling. Have a very good week, and we'll be catching up with you in the live webinars. Take care now. Bye.